I did a lot of things in my life. I was sometimes referred to as a trailblazer, and because I am 71 years of age as of this past January the 15th. No, I'm lying, I'm 84. One of the things I also did very early on in my life was get married again and again and again and again. And obviously, and I remember once I went to make a speech in Hamilton, and I started speaking, and I referred to the fact that at that point I'd been married 3 times, and a table of women, 6 of them, stood up and walked out of the room. Well, and now multiple marriages are a little more common. Once again, I was a trailblazer. I wish I hadn't been. This is the only foreword I've ever written for a book, and I've been asked on more than one occasion. And on every occasion I've been asked, I've asked the author if they would, could you send me the book? Well, I have a chapter. And a couple of times I've gotten the chapter and it wasn't very good. A couple of times I got the book and I was like, you know, I'm really busy, I can't get around to it right now. So I was a little hesitant when I was asked if I would write the foreword for a book for a woman I hadn't met and whose work I didn't know. But I was asked by a woman that I respect a lot, so one pays attention. And I read the book, and and in the foreword I say, had I read this when I was 18 or 19, perhaps I would have married somebody that it might have worked with. When I was 18 years old, a dear friend of mine said to me, who are you, Dini Petty? And no one had ever asked me that question. And so I spent my life running around circles with my head stuck in a dark place trying to figure out who the heck I am. When I started doing television, it was actually a blessing in several ways. One, I could earn a living and feed the kids. 2, I started doing a phone-in show on Tuesdays with a psychiatrist. His name was Saul Levine, and he was head of psychiatry at Sunnybrook Hospital, a wonderful human being. And people would phone in. It was a phone-in show. People call in their problems, and I'd go, well, that's really weird. I mean, you know. And then this person would call in, and I go, you know, I got a bit of that. And I'm like, oh, I got a bit of that. Oh, I got a bit of that. And I started to afford myself the luxury of introspection, which I had started when I was 18 trying to figure out who I am. I have looked at everything that came across my path. I actually went to study different religions, and actually the Catholic priest finally said, maybe you should go, I don't think this is for you. I've looked at existentialism, I've looked at Gestalt, and then when I got into television in the 80s and 90s, I interviewed everybody who wrote a self-help book, all of them. The only one I missed was Tony Robbins. I did every other one of them. So I'm a bit of a self-help book expert because I started looking at self-help books. I went back to the early 1900s and I started reading what they had written then. This is the only time in history where you have the luxury to figure out who you are. You have the time, the resources are there. At first there were some, Dale Carnegie is the man who set the stage for so many of what was to follow. But today you can actually read a book, or, which I have done twice, you could go lie on that woman's table, and that woman is magic. I actually had a bit of a physical healing while I was on your table. There's a woman here, Gail, will you stand up? Gail spoke at the launch of your first book. And Gail was really having, as we all do, because life is full of gigantic piles of dung, and then dung piles of other size, which fall into everybody's life. It just happens to all of us. And a huge one had fallen into your life. And someone suggested you go and see this woman, and it changed her life. You can change your life, and I like if I read this when I was 18, and if you read it when you're 18 or 20, or no matter what age you are, we all have problems, life is not easy. I'm 71 years old, I'm sort of got my act together, but it's a never-ending journey. It's the best journey in the world to make peace with yourself, and then peace with everyone else. And if you're looking for a woman to guide you, she's a kind soul, she's brilliant, she's a healer, and she's a great author. Ladies and gentlemen, the woman herself. Come on, Victoria. You are fabulous, I love you. Victoria and I are engaged. Sorry, Kevy.
Thank you so much, Dini. A big round of applause for Dini Petty. Thank you so much. And also for Michael Davey, my publisher. Thank you so much. Manor House Publishing. I really appreciate that you took me on and believed in me and read my first book and said, yeah, we'll take you on for the next one. So I really appreciate that. That was a really fortuitous experience. So I feel honored and blessed in so many ways. So, I mean, I have many people to thank, but I want to get to doing a bit of a reading from the book, but I obviously want to thank my husband, who is my partner and my cheerleader, my supporter, and we have been together 25 years. So I understand the concept of long-term passionate marriage, which is something that I really believe in. So it's an institution I do believe in, but I believe that connecting of all sorts is something we need to be conscious about, and we need to really focus our intentions lest we repeat the cycles of dysfunction that we inherit from our family culture if we leave them unanalyzed and unlooked at. And that is what that's what gets me up in the morning, I say to people. I'm passionate about stopping the cycle of dysfunction, essentially. Stopping, if I can, if possible, being exposed to the information. And I thought to myself, wow, some amazing stuff going on in the office. Maybe we need to write the book so other people outside of the office can have access to this information. So that's why I wrote it. I wrote it because I got something to say, and I really am so thrilled you guys are here to help me celebrate that. And I want to read a little bit, if you permit, from it. Okay, glasses, yes. One needs glasses these days. So I'm just going to read a little bit, okay? And see how it goes. We can take responsibility for ourselves, and we can decide to grow beyond what we have learned. We can rewire every belief that we inherited from our family culture through intention, awareness, and repetition. We can engage the new awareness through performing deliberate actions and making deliberate decisions over and over again until our neural pathways reflect those changes and our lives embody those shifts. This then creates a new normal, a new pattern, a new way of being. When you choose to rewire your relationship culture, which is what this book is called, Connecting, Rewire Your Relationship Culture, you are in effect deciding that the connection you have with the people in your life is going to be different from what you learned multi-generationally. And of course, you're only changing what is not healthy, functional, or helpful. Keep what is. You can do this. You can rewire your relationship culture. You can create a new normal. The question is, will you do the work that is required? Will you go on the journey to search for your treasure, a happy, healthy, passionate, connected relationship culture? Will you decide that you no longer want to repeat the relationship patterns that you learned from your family culture that were not healthy or functional? Will you repeat these new awarenesses over and over and until it becomes the new normal? If your answer is yes to these questions, then you are deciding that the buck stops with you. That the cycle of dysfunction stops with you, and that you are going to successfully halt generations of dysfunctional relationships and families by rewiring your relationship culture. And then I'm just going to skip ahead a tiny little bit. And of course I didn't mark it, but that's okay. Also, once you get into that great relationship that you worked diligently to be ready for and decided to marry, it behooves you to learn the skills and tools to fight fairly so that you contribute to the cleanup of the relationship versus the mess. The initiate and reflect exercise that I discuss in chapter 8, that's a real treasure in there, is one of the best methodologies I know of that is fundamental to the successful navigation through your triggers, hurt feelings, conflicts, and anger. And then I just want to read this last little bit. It is true that the kinds of relationships that I think are worth fighting for are not drama-filled, like the Hollywood-endorsed relationships people frequently see today. I am speaking of the stuff of creating long-term, healthy, functional, passionate relationships that can stand the test of time and provide a healing elixir that can quite possibly render neutral and harmless a multi-generational destructive and dysfunctional patterning. With all this, you get to celebrate the fact that it was you. It was you who decided to make the difference. It was you who decided to make sure that you, your partner, the relationship you choose to create, and the children you decided to have would be healthy. And it was you who pursued the process of rewiring your relationship culture. And due to the self-love you chose to foster in yourself, you decided that you were not going to hurl onto the future generations everything that was hurled upon you. You decided that you would live a life of good relationships that were accountable, healthy, vulnerable, authentic, respectful, passionate, and loving. Well, I say bravo. I tip my hat off to you if you are one of those people who refuses to succumb to living a life that is less than what is your due, but who chooses to live a life that is filled with the richness of a healthy, sane, happy, passionate relationship culture. Thank you very much. I just want to thank you all for coming and for being a part of this extremely moving, wonderful, astonishingly surprising evening of sharing of this culmination of this book. And it took a lot to create. And I hope you enjoy it and continue to foster positivity in the world, which is what it's about.